Well, I think in the interest of keeping on schedule, we'll go ahead and get started, even though people are still trickling in here. Good morning. Happy August 12th, I guess it is, from sun-baked North Carolina. And welcome to this workshop. My name is Joe Hefner, and I work with Tom Okuma to create and sometimes even present continuing professional development workshops for the Optics Initiative funded by National Science Foundation. We both work with Chris Louie, who is the Optics Director, and she is here. And I think she's in charge of the recording. So there she is. And I'm just going to show a very quick slide or two here. There's the obligatory QR code that will take you to the Optics website, where everything there is to know about optics is stored online. And over here on the left, and I guess I need to share my screen so people can actually see that, right? How about now? So there's the QR code over on the right that you can scan, and that will take you to the Optics headquarters online at AAPT. And over here on the left, we see some upcoming workshops that we have scheduled. And we have even more. These are just the ones that are definitively on the schedule. We have Maintaining Student Groups at Two-Year Colleges, a virtual workshop coming up in just 8 days, actually. And then in September, we're going to have a workshop on implementing step-ups strategies in classrooms. And finally, on September 15th, we are going to look at how your values affect classroom experiences. We are really going to try to cover everything from more theoretical type workshops to hands-on workshops that take us into the classroom, and how to put some of these wonderful ideas and much needed ideas to work in various curricular situations. So, and like I said, these are just the next 3 or so. We've got many more in the works. And let's see, at the end, I'm going to ask everyone to please do an evaluation for this workshop, because we really want your feedback. That has been our guiding light through all of our planning and implementation of these workshops. And this workshop is no different. And I'll put this back up, and I'll put the link in the chat area as the workshop winds down. So let me stop sharing. And so the purpose of today's workshop is to talk about how to plan events for safely viewing solar eclipses. There is a solar eclipse coming up in October, and there's another one coming up in April. And we have two guests today who are eminently qualified to talk about these issues. Matt Cass is an instructor of astronomy and physics at Southwestern Community College in Sylvan, North Carolina, just up the road from me. And up the interstate in the other direction, in the Statesville area, is John O'Neill. John is a NASA Solar System ambassador and a nationally renowned solar observer and photographer. John, feel free to put your website in the chat area there, and I encourage everybody to go to his website and just look at the beautiful solar astrophotography. And beautiful really is an understatement. And look at John's work. John is also a member of our local astronomy club, and I don't know if he's going to be at the observatory tonight or if you're going to go somewhere special to attempt to see the Perseids. But
yeah, I'm going up to the mountains.
Okay, a lot of people are going to be up on the Blue Ridge Parkway tonight, looking for these Perseid meteors. So let's see, who did we say was going to go first?
Matt.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm going to turn things over to Matt Cass, who's going to talk about solar eclipse outreach in a rural setting.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and Tom and Chris for having me. So yeah, I'm going to talk about running an eclipse event give you all a little bit of background of like why I'm qualified to do this. I'm not just some random person from North Carolina that Joe knows and was like, hey. Um, but we'll do a little bit of administrative stuff here up front. That QR code, go ahead and grab it now. It should link you to these slides because there's going to be a lot of information. I'm not going to say everything on every slide because it gets pretty into the weeds, but I want you to be able to go back and look at it on your own time. And there's going to be a whole bunch of resources at the end in the form of web links that you can utilize. And really, that's kind of, just a can of worms of you're going to click one of those links and it's just going to give you 50 resources under like each one. So there's tons of Eclipse resources out there. Just one of the things is knowing where to look. So all right, let's get started here. Hope you guys can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So just an overview of where we're going to do. We're going to do a land acknowledgement, some background and introduction, like I mentioned. We're going to cover some of the basics, what I consider the keys to success, and then I'm going to kind of do a deep dive into those aspects, which are basically planning, safety, learning, and fun. I'm going to talk specifically, because this is optics, about working with two-year colleges, give you some examples from our experience with a solar eclipse. And I want to talk a little bit about follow through. So yes, land acknowledgement. Southwestern Community College and its service area is situated in Western North Carolina on the ancestral land of the Cherokee people. Today, we live and work with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians to ensure equitable STEM representation and a place at the table for non-Western wisdom and perspectives. That dot there is where we're located, where I am located today, sitting at Southwestern Community College. And that shaded green area is the ancestral lands of the Cherokee. If you don't know what native lands you're on, the nativeland.ca website link there at the bottom can help you find that out. And that's useful in working with your communities. You'll hear me mention that because not everyone treats eclipses the same way, and we need to be respectful of those traditions. So a little bit of background. I'm the principal investigator for the Smoky Mountain STEM Collaborative. It's a NASA science activation group that we started we applied in 2015. We were funded in 2016. And one of the things that we were funded for was to put on an eclipse event here in Western North Carolina. Because the 2017 eclipse passed right overhead, right through our service area of the college, right through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, right through the Qualla boundary, which is where the Cherokee live today. And so it was a very important place to focus on for NASA. So they funded us to hold some events here, in addition to doing STEM engagement with the community. And we were able to hold several events over multiple days at different levels of scale. And all of them were successful. I never heard any horror stories out of them. So I wish you the best of luck with that as well. Hopefully with John and I's tips today, you will also have a successful event. So the basics, of course, this is just kind of a little joke because this is a 2-hour workshop. We need a little humor. This is from Katie Mack, I think, who made the joke first, with the lunar eclipse, the solar eclipse, and then the apocalypse. Just the arrangement, the Earth, Moon, Sun arrangement for teaching that. And I think it helps when you're engaging your audience, to be able to joke about it. And it's a nice lead in to explaining why the mechanics behind why the lunar eclipse happens versus the solar eclipse and why we never want that apocalypse scenario to occur. So just a little joke there. I'm sure if you're in this meeting, you have seen this map or a variation of this map, but the eclipse paths for 2023-2024. Of course, the 2023 is an annular eclipse. I'll repeat multiple times about that, you're not going to have totality. You're going to need eye safety the entire time in some form or another. And then, of course, those that are lucky enough to be in the path of totality for 2024 and have good weather, they're going to get those, that time to take off the glasses and just bask in the awesome experience that is totality. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So if you're in any of those areas, if you're in one of those centerline areas, you're definitely in the right place today if you're planning an event, and hopefully you already have been planning an event. So these are what I consider the keys to success. You got to have safety and planning kind of at the forefront. We don't want anyone to get hurt at these things. And it is, believe it or not, if you are in one of those center lines that I showed, you are now a destination, especially for totality. So you have to do some planning, do some all hands on deck style, and convince people that this is a big deal. And I'll tell you some tricks, hopefully, that'll convince people that aren't 100% on board with it. And then, fun and learning kind of go hand in hand. From my teaching standpoint, I like to make the learning fun. And so we're going to look at some activities that you can do. And of course, not necessarily any of them are original. You probably have heard of them before, but they bear repeating. So this is an image of us, our Klingman's Dome event, Kauai, in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You'll see some more images from Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and you'll also see images from our community college event later on. So I'm not going to read all of this, but this is getting into the planning part. With managing expectations, if you're a rural community, there's some things you need to consider. If you're in the main path, you're definitely going to be a destination, especially if we're talking about totality. In 2024, the more southern you are, the more likely you are to have clear skies, which means the more likely people are going to be to flock to it. Going into 2017, it was the first time that we had a solar eclipse in the age of social media and kind of like that immediate dispersal of knowledge, and in the United States, I should say. And we weren't really sure how people were going to react, but with the way the information spreads, everybody just kind of flocked to areas. They were made into destinations, whether they're normally thought of as a destination or not. Outside the main path, I don't know. That's going to be something that I'm going to experience this time around, because Sylva, North Carolina is not in totality for 2024, and we're not on the path for the annular eclipse either. In fact, I'm probably one of the only people here on campus that really know about it, despite the fact that I've been pushing it. Most people are just like, oh, is it going to be like last time? And I'm like, no. And they're like, okay. And then their excitement kind of dies down. But if you're in that main path, it's going to be a big deal. And part of your job, if you're planning an event, is going to be convincing people it's a big deal. And so we'll talk about that scale here in a moment. If you're planning an event that goes beyond your campus, the folks that you should be involving include your government, like your local government, regional, even state level folks. Lots of politicians like to come and visit these events. Indigenous communities. If you have any indigenous communities within the path, they need to know if they don't already. And you have to be respectful of their traditions. Here in Western North Carolina, the Cherokee have tales of the eclipse, and in their stories, it is a frog that devours the sun during totality. Other indigenous communities are not, they have different interpretations, and they do not go outside during the eclipse. They don't look at it. So you need to learn yourself what these traditions are and be respectful of them when you reach out to communities to do, learning with your citizens. Emergency management and law enforcement agencies. I learned a lot doing this myself. For example, all those road signs that tell you that there's going to be road work on the interstate for the next, 20, 30 miles and, things of that nature. Those mobile signs I learned were not just law enforcement, but emergency management controlled those. And they are the ones that had to put them out to help manage traffic on Eclipse Day, because let me tell you, the traffic is unreal if you are in the main path for totality, and especially if your roads aren't normally built to handle thousands and thousands of cars. The parks department, whether that's just like your county park department, or if you are in an area with a national park, you should reach out to them. Businesses will love this, especially hotels. Okay, hotels are probably already booked up or booking up along the 2024 path for totality. That's one of the ways that you can kind of sell people on how big of a deal this is. Not many people want to go to Maine in April, but I bet their hotels are filling up regardless. For the 2024 eclipse. And then general public, and then your schools should know. The annular eclipse, of course, being on a Saturday, public schools probably not going to do much on that day, but there's things that you can do with school teachers and with the public schools to let them know that this is coming, and that kids and their parents should go outside on that day with eclipse glasses or with a pinhole viewer or some other indirect viewing method. And then just let the general public know through forums, advertisements, things of that nature. So when you're trying to pitch this to a rural community, when the first time I did this, I just had to tell them, oh, it's going to be big, it's going to be awesome, because I didn't know. But for me, having experienced it in the level of traffic and the influx of people, I like to pitch it as you're a small rural town. Imagine the homecoming parade for the local high school. Imagine any holiday parade. Imagine the local high school is also like the state champion of the favorite sport in your area. And you're also welcoming, a famous hometown hero, whether they be an actor or an astronaut. Put all that together, and you're not even going to be close to the influx of people that we experienced here in Western North Carolina. Great Smoky Mountains National Park is one of the most visited parks in the summer, if not the most. I think it varies year to year. And it was gridlocked in the park. That it was just bumper to bumper, because what people will do is they'll come in, and if the eclipse ends at 12:01 Eastern, it doesn't, but if it ends at 12:01 Eastern, then at 12:02 Eastern, people are in their cars trying to leave. And I'll share some strategies about trying to reduce that effect. But yeah, have people check hotels to see, is it filling up? That tends to open eyes, and it gets businesses involved, because people means you can make money, right? I've already mentioned the traffic. Normal drive to where I was at during totality is about 45 minutes. It took me 4 hours to get home. And I even stayed after totality. Like, I stayed through an entire event, and took me, 4 times as long roughly to get back to my house. And I took an out of the way back road, because the we call it a 4-lane, but it's a 2-lane divided highway, 2 lanes each side. It was just bumper to bumper. And that never happens. Hasn't happened since, and hasn't happened before. Know your audience. If you're doing a big public event, make sure it's family friendly. Okay. Telescopes are accessible generally to just people that can stand up and look at them. You might want to consider how would you be accessible to folks that are short, like little kids, or people that might be wheelchair bound, people that might not be able to stand up and look through a scope. Have ways for them to encounter your telescopes or view the eclipse. if you're expecting just a bunch of scientists to show up for a private thing that you're doing, you know, not open to the public, but like for your students at your 2-year college, then, you know, set something up off to the side for the scientists, and then have a larger area for your students. Consider pre and post activities. We had storytellers, musicians, professionals like subject matter experts give talks about science. You can bring in some local school children to do a play about the eclipse. This helps stagger people coming in and out. If you turn, you know, a couple minutes of totality into, you know, an hours long afternoon of activities, you're going to have people that aren't just rushing and then rushing to depart. If you have any federal partners like we did with Great Smoky Mountains National Park, use the incident command system. They're probably going to want to do that anyway, but it's super effective, and it handles pretty much anything you can imagine. And even though if you go on those websites, they'll tell you this is the time of first contact and last contact, and this is when totality happens. Even though that's the Eclipse event, this is an all-day event for staff. You know, you're going to show up early, you're going to stay late. And not just because of the traffic, but because of all the people and the activities. So with planning, some of this is going to sound a little redundant because I feel it's important to hear it multiple times. Who are you going to involve? Government, businesses, schools, indigenous communities, so on and so forth. But also grab the media. If you aren't comfortable being interviewed, find someone who is, that'll talk about the eclipse, and get them in front of a camera. Our local news stations really enjoyed that. It's a great way to educate people about what's coming. So you can slip in messages there of like, you know, this is an annular eclipse. It's never safe to look at it without glasses. You know, this is a total eclipse. We are in the main path. You will be able to remove your glasses, but make sure you know when to. Reach out to your community organizations. They'll love to have a guest speaker. Sometimes they're a great resource for finding volunteers, because a lot of them have civic aspects to them that where they like to work with the community. You can kind of train your own Eclipse ambassadors if you're having a really big event. Just draw on some community volunteers, help them get trained through a variety of different resources, and you know, have them participate in that regard. Reach out to your churches, libraries. Those are both knowledge centers in rural communities. And they're also ways that people exchange information. And then your astronomy club. If you're lucky enough to have an astronomy club in your region and they're not already planning something, first of all, what are they doing? But second of all, get them to come to your site if you're a 2-year college, but you don't have like a big astronomy department. But you want telescopes there, invite an astronomy club to come and work with your students. So planning when to start, sooner is better than later. Some of you hopefully already are planning, especially if we're talking about the annular eclipse. And then this is a photo, it's just a draft of one of the many versions of our event in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You'll have meetings, lots of meetings, and you'll revise it going along. We've talked about the different types of eclipses, whether it's an annular eclipse or totality. Make sure you are aware of that. And like, for instance, Carbondale, Illinois in 2017 had totality. In 2024, they're lucky enough to have totality again. But the annular eclipse is going to be different for them, right? So how does that affect their messaging? You know, for me, I was telling everyone in 2017, at this time, you can take your glasses off. If people say it's okay because we are in totality, you can look up at the eclipse. And then at this time, you need to put them back on. These are the things to look for. I'm going to have a partial eclipse for the annular and the 2024 total eclipse in my region. So I'm going to need to tell people something a little different. You know, I'm going to have to say, hey, it's not going to be okay to look at this one in Sylvan, North Carolina without your glasses or some other indirect method. I have lots of meetings. Like I said, one of the things that was really helpful with emergency management and law enforcement was we did a tabletop exercise, the situation manual picture of that there, where we brought together everyone. We ran through about 18 different scenarios about what could possibly go wrong at one of these and how we would respond. And it's some stuff that as a scientist, of course, I might not necessarily think of. It's like, what if there's a bomb threat at one of these events, or not even a threat, but just a suspicious bag or package is left, what do we do to make sure EMS can get to places when, everyone is parked on the road trying to leave the eclipse? Things of that nature we covered. It's really useful. It gets everyone on the same page. And it helps put you, if you participate, it helps put you in front of these folks that you can do some of the educational components. Because people with uniforms are going to get asked questions on Eclipse Day, whether they know stuff or not. They're going to, especially like EMS, but even law enforcement, they might be asked, hey, can I look at this? Can I look at the sun now without glasses? And it would be great if they could give an answer, right? A knowledgeable answer. When in doubt, I tell people, when in doubt, don't look at the sun without eclipse glasses, so that they feel like they can always say something that's not going to get anyone hurt. But if they go through some training, they might know, hey, at this time we're going to have totality, and we'll be able to look. And these are some things you can look for. Meet with your Chamber of Commerce so that they're on board economically. They'll get behind it. They'll sell Eclipse glasses in all the little stores downtown, things of that nature. Let the Board of Education know for the annular eclipse. Public schools probably won't have Saturday school, but in April, that's a Monday. Some kids might be in school, or it might occur during a time where buses are running. Board of Education is going to have to make a decision. Are we going to hold kids? Are we going to have kids go out and experience this? Are we just going to cancel school that day? Every district's different. And then public forums, whether they're at the library or with civic organizations, just go out and meet with people. Let them know it's happening, answer their questions, get them excited. Okay. Get them excited about the science that's happening at their home. So share that information. Just if you have Eclipse viewing glasses that you can just give away, do it, right? Those things last as long as they don't get damaged. Just make sure they're from a reputable source. Speaking of Eclipse glasses, just some personal safety considerations when you're looking. If you're going to look, make sure you're using solar viewing glasses. Welder's glass number 14 is also approved. If you're going to use scopes or binoculars, you have to use the appropriate solar filters. Pinhole projection is great. I'm going to show a couple examples of that that we demonstrated at the AAPT meeting this past summer. And then I just like the joke, you can even use a colander, just careful that you don't strain your eyes. And just remember, totality is the only time you can look without glasses. The annular eclipse will not have totality. So make sure if you are in that path that nobody confuses it and thinks that it's okay. Repeat announcements and signage in multiple languages, especially if you're in a community that has, a lot of folks that don't speak English as their primary language. When and if it is safe to remove glasses at the event, train your law enforcement so that they can help out. If you have a big event that's organized and you have an MC, they can make an announcement over a loudspeaker, remove glasses, put glasses back on, that sort of thing. Just keep those eyes safe. Again, can't harp on this enough. This is from NASA. This is a product that they put out with the 2017 Eclipse. That's neat because it says when you need to have the glasses on and off with totality, but it also talks about, like Bailey beads and the diamond ring effect, which I think is just kind of neat, a little bit extra education there, along with the safety. So learning, front load your learning. Okay, do all of this as much as possible ahead of time, just like we are today. You don't want to do a lot of stuff during totality in 2024. And really anything you're going to be doing during the eclipse, like with a group, you can use your pinholes and your indirect viewing methods. Tell folks to watch out for things like change in temperature, sound, look for the crescent shaped shadows and sun balls. If you're in totality, yeah, I didn't have any luck with shadow bands, but I know they're there. Look for stars, the sunset lighting, the diamond ring effect, all that stuff that's neat that occurs with totality. If you're working with community groups here with that annular eclipse coming up, visit the schools and out of school time programs ahead of time, like boys and girls clubs, and if the school has a robotics club, go talk to them. They'll be interested. Send home flyers for the parents so that they're aware as well. Enlist and train Eclipse ambassadors. Identify and recruit a solar system ambassador. I just learned that John today is one of those. They are a great group. But they're all over the place. And if you can get one of them, that's probably one of your best bets. So if John's not already committed somewhere, you should recruit him. Sorry, John.
I'm committed.
With working with rural communities, utilize low and no bandwidth activities, meaning like if you can have things that don't require an internet connection, do so. It's hard enough to do that in rural, hard enough to get internet connections in some rural areas anyway. But if you put a bunch of people in there and you super load the cell services, and that's how they're trying to access the internet, you're not going to have as much luck. Go ahead and put on your calendar opportunities in the weeks and days up to the eclipse. Say like, we're going to do learning now. We had some stuff leading up to the eclipse regarding the knowledge. We had panel speakers and guests, and then also consider citizen science opportunities. I'll mention one of those a little bit ahead of time, a little bit further along, where you can actually contribute to the growing body of knowledge that is eclipse science. So as promised, here's the indirect viewing method that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. You just poke pinholes. You can do it into fun shapes, as Dan Burns did here. This is a box that he put together in Sacramento and asked me to watch to make sure it stayed visible. We did kind of a little eclipse activity out there, extravaganza at the AAPT meeting. One of the things that I hadn't seen before, and it's kind of hard to see here, but there's a reverse pinhole. You can kind of see the sun images. This is clear plexiglass with like some black puff paint, creating small dots, and you can kind of get an inverse reverse pinhole image there. And then when you're standing around in the Sacramento sun for a while, you get creative. We had these little diffraction gratings at our station, so I just kind of threw one of them in with the plexiglass there and was able to get the spectrum broken out in there as well. And this was you can't tell here, but this was a pretty large size box. It wasn't like a cereal box personal viewer that you may have seen before, but you just hold the angle right and people can walk up and they can see it. And of course, during an eclipse, these sun images will show the shape of that. You can get that crescent shape, and folks can learn about the sun that way. I did include, with Dan's permission, he gave a talk at AAPT that had a whole bunch of eclipse activities, and I asked him, he said go for it, so I threw the link to his resources onto my resources page. So at the end of the slide deck, you'll see that it's marked off, and you can do that. So 2017 eclipse was a big deal. In 2018, this is just kind of an aside that I want to talk about. The film Hale County this evening came out. Hale County is in Alabama, I believe. And it just talks about life in the community, and it's a documentary. Talks about the struggles that the community has with poverty and jobs and education. But there's a segment in there that involves the solar eclipse. And I've been talking for a long time, and I've talked far longer than I like, but I want to just take a brief moment, maybe a minute or two. This is obviously a pinhole projection of the solar eclipse. It is from this film, this documentary film, Hale County, this morning, this evening. But just take a minute and post in the chat what you think they're using to get this pinhole projection. It's not a piece of paper, I'll tell you that, but just take a minute, because it's going to be this kind of the center of this kind of discussion within a discussion that I want to have. So I'm going to wait until at least one person puts a guess in there. In the chat. I guess you could say it too. Okay, a leaf. Looks like crochet something. All right. A comb. Window screen. All right, bubble wrap. Okay. All right. So here's what it is. It's kind of hard to see, but can you see what it is now? It's a waffle fry. Okay. There's a moment in the film that focuses on the community with the eclipse. And you get this image, and then you see the gentleman, and he's holding a Chick-fil-A waffle fry and projecting the image onto the top of this barrel. And it really struck me, not only the ingenuity of this, because nobody told him, hey, use a waffle fry. He did this, right? I've never taught waffle fry, but I'm obviously teaching it now. But waffle fry will work as a pinhole viewer. But the discussion they have about this organic discussion that they have in this moment in the film is really interesting, because one of the things they say is and they're off camera, so you can't see because it's all focused on the eclipse. One of the things they say is, they told us we couldn't see it. They told us we couldn't see it. And of course, they're referring to the eclipse. And as somebody who's knowledgeable about the eclipse, especially the 2017, I'm sure what the message was you will not see totality in Hale County. But if we're not careful with our messaging and the way that we communicate to the public, they're going to hear things and interpret things that are incorrect. And so that's on us to make sure we're very effective in our messaging so that our community can experience it. Saying things like, oh, you're not in the path of totality, that's not good enough. Like a lot of people, like 99.99% is not good enough. And it's like, well, that's true from a certain point of view, right? That's not going to give you totality. Totality is a totally different experience. But letting people know, hey, this is what you'll see in totality versus this is what you'll see outside of totality where you currently are, is very different than you're not going to see totality. That's just kind of final in the end. It doesn't talk to people about, hey, you're going to see crescents. It's not going to be safe to look at it without glasses, at any time, because you're in a partial phase. So it just kind of grabbed me, and I was like, hey, there's astronomy in this documentary about, this county and the poverty in it, and the journey of the people that live there. But boom, there was this lesson. And so I just wanted to share that. You can use a waffle fry. So after talking about low bandwidth, no bandwidth, I do want to include one bandwidth option, one thing that you can do, because it's a great program that I like to promote, the Globe program, if any of you are familiar with it. They have a companion app that you can do science on the go. It's citizen science. You just make yourself an account, do that ahead of time, not on the eclipse day. And some of the things the app can do is you can evaluate cloud conditions, you can do land cover, mosquito habitats, because they do some stuff with like Zika tracking and things of that nature. And then they also have specific measurement campaigns like for the eclipse. So I just blatantly, I take things from the case, CASE, copy and steal everything. I borrowed this from Globe's toolkit, where you can use the observer and just a simple thermometer, and you track temperature during the partial phase and then totality, and you report it. And if you go into their web link that I have at the end, and you go through all their materials, you'll see many more slides, and you can see all the data points from all over. But it's a way to have people that are interested participate in this science across the nation, and they can upload their data, and then other folks can see that, and you can see the data that other people have uploaded. So that's the Globe Observer app. Talk a little bit about accessibility. I think I've mentioned multiple language materials as far as like signage, but if you're going to have handouts, make sure that you have them for the language of the learners that are around you. Make sure you got the low, no bandwidth activities, make sure you have activities and materials for those with visual impairments. NASA has some really good tactile Eclipse materials for the visually impaired. But then there is also an app that you can download ahead of time, the Eclipse Soundscapes project through NASA. They have rumble maps. I kind of just took a screenshot of the Soundscapes app, and it's on Google and Google Play Store for Android, and I'm pretty sure it's in the iPhone store as well, the Apple store. But they have these sonification of these Eclipse images, and it also triggers the rumble feature of the phone, so you can move your hand around the image on the screen, and you hear different tones, and it vibrates with intensity, when you hit like areas where like the diamond ring effect, not on this image, but with the diamond ring effect, it'll get louder, so that folks can experience the eclipse. So fun. Things that we did, we had live entertainment, there were food vendors. This is all up at Klingman's Dome. I know that our school, the college, had like a grab and go type lunch. I have learning and sharing opportunities, advertising opportunities. Artistic expression is a great thing. One of the images that I shared at the beginning of this, there was a drawing of the solar eclipse, and it said "pretty neat" underneath. We had a wall that folks could just draw and write and share, what the eclipse meant to them and what they thought about it. I had students come in at the community college, and I gave them materials, and I'm like, okay, create some art about the eclipse and let's talk about it. And I had this one woman, she painted a beautiful watercolor, and she turned it in. I was like, oh my gosh, and I gave it back to her, and I said, can I get a copy of this? And she said, actually, you can just have it. And she's like, like as a gift. And I was like, thank you. And it's actually hanging in my office over on the far wall. But it'll surprise you what your learners will interpret the eclipse as, and the hidden talents that can manifest when you make this beyond just science, that you make it a human endeavor that calls on all their abilities. So let's talk about two-year colleges, because I know a lot of you are two-year college faculty, and this is optics, and I'm also in a two-year college. I did my planning with an ad hoc planning committee. We just pulled together for the eclipse. I said, hey, this is coming, we got to do something about it, and luckily enough, they listened. Get your science teachers. Administration needs to be on board. At the very least, your dean, if not the vice president and president. Get public relations involved, so you can do advertising, student services, so that they can interface with students. And like if you have a newsletter, maintenance, security, and parking, those folks need to know too, especially if day of you need like part of the parking lot blocked off for telescopes. Are you going to cancel classes if you have classes on that day? Is that couple hour block going to be, are students going to be required to be inside? Maybe the English teacher doesn't, care about totality. Maybe you need to convince them to. Are you going to make it open to public? Like if you're like us, where enrollment's down at the college, it could be a recruiting event. Get people on campus, have them come in and experience the Eclipse, see what you all have to offer, and then get them to sign up for classes, right? This image here from Matt Zahir, who works with the North Carolina Museum of Science, this was totality at our campus. This image was taken at our campus. They came out, they were here. I'm pretty sure this was the one that they officially used to represent North Carolina totality in the magazine that month, or in their promotional materials. But that was grabbed at our campus. This is a road into campus. This is the main road out in front of campus, but you can see folks lined up there. We blocked off some spots here for telescopes and photography, and then people were just out there, right? Do your pre-post activities, invite subject matters to come give a talk. If you have a subject matter expert that can come and talk about eclipses in your auditorium. If you don't have telescopes, check the local astronomy club and then provide them space. If you have faculty and student welcome back or kickoff events the way that we do, that's a great point. That's a great contact point to just get out there and let people know, be like, hey, this is coming. By the way, if you already have glasses, you can hand those glasses out at that. Tell them the date. It's great if the glasses have the date on them. Give those things out. Give them out in your welcome back kits if you do that kind of thing for students and faculty, and just make sure people are aware that it's happening and that if there's going to be an event, that they should come out and be a part of it. But don't stop there after the eclipse. It's a major event for anyone that experiences totality. There's really nothing like it. If you haven't experienced totality, definitely make sure you can in 2024. Use it to sustain interest, offer STEM related talks in your community. Go talk to the library, talk to your civic organizations, your after school programs. If you are part of the STEM learning ecosystem, if you know what that is, even if you don't, you might even be part of one though. This should be like lighting up all the nodes. Like everybody should be. This should be a thing where just everybody is engaged. And then nurture the connections you make during the planning to increase collaboration on upcoming events. Not saying you're going to have another eclipse, but the Perseids are happening right now. Maybe you want to do something on campus involving the Perseids. It's super late at night, but if you've already shook hands with security at your 2-year college, and you know who they are and they know who you are, they might be willing to work with you again, especially if you show them a good time at the eclipse. Here's that resource list I was promising you, a whole bunch of stuff. And of course, I'm not going to click on those. You can do that yourself. And there's my contact information and our project's contact information if you want to follow us on social media. And my little NASA disclaimer because they fund me. But thank you all. I do see a few questions there. I don't know if we're doing questions all at the end, Joe, or not, but I am done with my presentation either way.
Go ahead and take a couple if you want,
Okay.
while John sets up for his part of the show.
Okay, Chris, I'm starting at the bottom, working up. I see. Chris responded to Chris there that if you are in totality, that it really depends on your local infrastructure, not knowing where you are, not knowing if you're rural. It's kind of hard for me to give an accurate prediction, but that yes, you can expect longer commute times post eclipse, and you can expect to be pretty busy pre-eclipse. I will say that I got to my site really early because it was like I said, it was an all-day thing for me. I didn't have any problems getting up to the site. It was trying to leave afterwards that I had the issue, but I was up there, you know, right after sunup. So your rural in totality, then yeah, Chris, I would anticipate that you should involve emergency management, let them know that there's going to be a lot of people on the road. They might want to consider directing traffic at certain places, like if you have a rural downtown and they're going to do a downtown community event, you know.
I think what I'm asking is should we book entertainment for after the eclipse, or just
yeah, definitely. We had entertainment pre and post totality, just to kind of keep people there. You know, I think we had some speakers at the beginning and we had a musician at the end of after totality. So is it safe to check the glasses with a light bulb to ensure we're okay, or just not worth the risk? You can definitely check your glasses. I don't think you want to use just a common light bulb, though. If Joe or John want to weigh in on that, I'll use, maybe this isn't the right way to do it, but like the big solar filters I use on my telescopes, I'll use like the flashlight on my camera or on my phone. And if I see any type of pinhole, they advise, on those, they're like, cover it up with Sharpie. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's all right. But if it's very obviously damaged, just replace them. But if they've been sitting in a box, like some of the ones I have in our storage room, they're probably going to be fine. But yeah, I would check them. They don't go bad. Some of them have an expiration date on them. I don't know why. Maybe it was so that they could sell more because they knew they would have that opportunity. But they don't go bad. Yeah, Marty. So let's see. Yeah, any waffle fry will do. I'm not actually promoting Chick-fil-A. We don't really have Chick-fil-A here either, but I'm sure you can find waffle fries if you really want to do the waffle fry effect there. Do a whole food-based, have moon pies, waffle fry viewer. You could do a whole food-based curriculum around the eclipse if you wanted.
Moon pies and waffle fries. It even rhymes.
Yeah. Wash it down with some sun drop or something. If y'all have sun drop, that's
we have sun
drop. Yeah, North Carolina had sun drop, but I don't know about California. I saw California on here. I don't know about them. Any other questions? I am still scrolling up to see. I think I missed some. This is off to the side.
Well, if there are any
there are ideas for pinhole viewers. And Joe and John can chime in on this as well. Of course, there's the traditional like shoebox or cereal box one where you poke the holes in on one side and stand with your back to the sun, and then you just look in the dark box and you can see it. ECU, okay, yeah. I think it's neater when it spells something out. I did a smiley face just recently on a pinhole viewer for some folks that did a campus tour. They wanted to see the sun during the day, so I took a solar scope out, but I also did a pinhole viewer, and then I talked about the eclipses coming up and how they'd be partials for us. So yeah, I think aside from objects that just have the hole, you can do it with nature, like with leaves, like on trees, the light that comes in between there, if you're able to get under a tree. I don't know, anybody else got any pinhole viewer ideas? Okay. And yeah, Tony, I was not on campus during totality. I had to pick a site, and because I was NASA funded, I picked the big NASA site up on Wingman's Dome, Kauai, the mountain in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. but I did a bunch of trainings. Some of my co-Is and other math and science teachers were on campus during totality. And we also had some folks from Appalachian State University come down, and they did some stuff, and they have some connections with the North Carolina Museum of Science, and they came over as well. So if you're in totality, you can get some of your state scientists to come to your campus, I guarantee, especially if they're not in totality. Like, you know, the people, like I probably could have told NC State, hey, do you want to come over here? They may have said yes. They may have said, no, we're going to go out west where it's more likely to not be cloudy. But we obviously didn't have too bad of a problem with clouds. So I got lucky up on Klingman's. So. All right.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Yep.
And now, John O'Neill is going to present some of the more technical aspects of safe solar eclipse viewing. And Matt, I think you need to unshare your screen there. There we go. And so I'm going to turn this over to John, and we will have sort of group Q&A after John's presentation. So even if you have another question for Matt, or if you have a question for John, stick around after his talk here, and let both speakers address any questions that may come up. So, John.
Okay, can everybody see my screen? Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Matt, you stole my thunder. Just kidding. We have a lot in common to talk about. I'm going to be repeating a lot of what you said, but I did learn a lot from your presentation. I took quite a few notes. So everybody, please get ready for the most spectacular astronomical event in recent history. Of course, the last total solar eclipse to cross the US was in 2017. In 2023, August 14th, we're going to have an annular eclipse. And an annular eclipse is kind of a total eclipse, but the moon is much smaller than the sun at that time. So you see a bright ring, and it's bright enough that it's not really considered a total eclipse, and you can't take your eclipse glasses off during an annular eclipse. Okay. So there's the table of contents, what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'll get this presentation to Joe, and he can distribute it if anybody is interested in checking it out after the fact. Safety first. That's the most important thing with any type of eclipse, and encouraging people to look at the sun. Normally we tell people don't ever look at the sun for any reason. Now we're going to be telling everybody, go out and look at the sun. So and there are several different aspects to this. First, of course, is individual eye safety. You don't want to hurt yourself, so make sure you learn and understand the rules of safety. There's equipment safety. You don't want to burn up your high-dollar telescope or any of your equipment. And third is crowd safety. If you're an educational institution and you're doing an event, you are kind of responsible for everybody in your charge, everybody that shows up. So I'd highly suggest that if you're doing an event, you educate people before the eclipse begins. Let everybody know what they need to do to be safe. And again, number 4, never, ever, 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 ever look directly at the sun. Only look at the sun with a safe solar filter. And we're going to talk about what filters are safe and how to properly use them. Because if you have a solar filter and you don't use it properly, you get the same net result as not using one at all. So learn to use, excuse me, learn to use them safely. Daystar Filters out in Missouri just started making solar glasses, and they're kind of got a lot of pretty ones, and there's a price list here. And they're reasonably priced, as are all the others out there on the market. And the thing with solar glasses is the more you buy, the cheaper they are. If you buy one pair, they're probably going to cost you $1 or so. If you buy 100, they might cost $0.25. If you buy 1,000, they're only going to cost a nickel or a dime. So depending on your needs, you can purchase appropriately and save yourselves a lot of money. If you're using any kind of magnifying optics, you need to put your solar filters in front of the optics. Just like the little graphic here with the eye. You put the solar filters in front of your eye to be safe. If you're using a telescope or a spotting scope or binoculars, you put it in front of them. The safe solar filters always are in front of whatever you are using to look at the sun. If you remember that, you're going to be safe. So it's a good idea to talk to people beforehand and let them know that. Don't go out there and grab a pair of binoculars and hold the glasses up behind them, because it's going to instantly burn a hole through the glasses and probably your eye if you're pointing it at the sun. So next, I want to talk a little bit about what to expect during an eclipse. Solar eclipses are hour-long events, many hours long events. Where I'm going in Texas, the eclipse is going to start at 12:15 and end at 3 o'clock. That's 2-hour and 45-minute duration. Of course, you need to arrive early and set up your gear. You're going to need to stay late and tear down your gear. So you could possibly be outside 3.5, 4 hours straight during either one of these total solar eclipse, the total solar eclipse or the annular eclipse. Weather, well, the first eclipse, the annular, is in October. The total eclipse is in April. So it could be 80, 90 degrees outside. It could be 10 degrees outside. Dress appropriately. If you're going to be outside for 4 hours and it's 10 degrees, you better have your parka and your mittens and your boots. If it's going to be 80, 90, well, then you need to dress for that. If there's a chance of rain, make sure you have a tarp handy. If you have any kind of a camera or even your phone on a tripod, you want to have a tarp there and just throw it over top so your equipment doesn't get ruined if it should rain. Another thing people don't often think about is hydration. If you're going to be outside in the sweltering heat for 4 hours, make sure you have plenty to drink. Don't show up with one water bottle and within a half hour you're wishing you'd brought more. Same goes with bugs. Maybe not so much in October, but in April, there's a good chance there's going to be a lot of bugs outside. So if you're going to be setting up in a grassy field, try to get somebody to cut the grass for you the day before, so you're not walking around in weeds and stirring up bugs. I'm having trouble reading this because it's a little small. Sorry about that. So one of the things you can do during the partial phase and you can see that in the 3 side-by-side pictures, is as the moon moves across the sun, watch for it to transit over sunspots. And that's always cool to see it approach and then eclipse the sunspots, and then watch it move off the other side. That's kind of really cool. Also, it's just fun to watch the phase. Watch as the sun gets smaller and smaller. You know, you can understand why the ancients thought that was a dragon eating the sun. It just looks like it's getting bites taken out of it. Once totality begins, there's a few things you want to watch for. Matt alluded to these earlier. And these are all photographs I took during the 2017 eclipse. Bailey's beads. As the moon first makes third contact and actually covers the sun, you can see Bailey's beads, which are prominences that are jutting out from the surface of the sun. And they'll just appear as little red lines or dots. The diamond ring. And the diamond ring is probably the most spectacular thing you can see during a total solar eclipse. And the corona also is quite spectacular, especially if you have a good sight and really crystal clear skies and good seeing. It's just tremendous how far that corona extends out. And yeah, Joe commented that Bailey's beads is direct evidence that the moon's surface is not smooth. What you're actually seeing there is mountain or valleys on the surface of the moon, and they're allowing the light to come through there, where if the moon were perfectly round, you wouldn't see that. Okay, partial eclipses. Again, do not, for any reason, remove your solar filters for the duration of the partial phase. So if you're in a location where you're only going to see partial phase of the eclipse, you will not take your glasses off for the entirety. See the 2 pictures there of the little girls. I saw this at the 2017 eclipse and I was kind of impressed with it. Sometimes you'll see kids with their solar glasses on and they're kind of peeking under them or over them. And this idea with the plate and the solar glasses cut into the plate shields their entire face. I thought that was a really good idea. At a total eclipse, it's a good idea to appoint somebody timekeeper. And they're going to be the person that says, okay, everybody, you can take your glasses off now. And let the public know beforehand that this person will be telling them when they take their glasses off. I noticed at the last eclipse that a lot of people, as soon as it started appearing a little darker, they wanted to get them glasses off. They thought, oh, it's darker than it was a minute ago, I can take my glasses off. Well, that's not the case. Shadow bands. Matt mentioned shadow bands. I did see shadow bands in the 2017 eclipse, and it's just a matter of having something white. I used a whiteboard from Staples and set it on an easel facing south, and a minute or so, maybe 2 minutes before totality, it looked like a bunch of snakes writhing over the board. It's really cool. I'd recommend everybody try that if you're going to be in totality. Site considerations. I heard about a group, I'm not going to mention who they are, but they set up in downtown Charlotte and they all had their scopes pointed at the sun, and about 15 minutes before totality, the sun moved behind a skyscraper, and they all had to hurry up and gather their gear and move. I guess they hadn't anticipated that the sun's going to move across the sky. So think about that when you go out. Make sure you have a good, clear line of sight. And try not to set up in a parking lot. The picture on the left kind of illustrates that. If you ever been traveling down the interstate and you're looking down the road, you see everything's all wavy and turbulent. That's the sun reflecting off the concrete. So that's not a good place to set up to do solar. Best thing's in a grassy field. Take your glasses, your recliner, and just sit back and watch and have a good time. The next thing I want to talk about is shooting the eclipse with a camera, whether it be a smartphone. Smartphones work quite well. A GoPro camera, a DSLR, or just a little Instamatic, whatever camera you have. It's like I say with telescopes, the best ones are the ones you have. So whatever camera you have, that's the best camera for you. So regardless of what kind of camera you have, take it out and use it. A lot of people told me, don't try imaging during the eclipse. It's not a good idea. Just take the time and stand there and look and watch. Don't be running around like a crazy person, fiddling with a camera. It's just too much. But I think if you do planning beforehand, if you practice with your camera, if you learn how everything works, if you have a DSLR, most people that have them have an intervalometer, and they can set that up and have the camera just standing there shooting automatically while you observe. There's a lot of ways to go about automating the process. And Daystar Filters makes a ULF foldable universal lens filter. And that's what's in the image at the top of the screen there. These things, it's a piece of Mylar with a cardboard surround with interlocking little tabs on it. And you just lock them tabs and you order what you need to cover the lens of your spotting scope, your telescope, your camera, whatever. And they're very reasonably priced. And somewhere in there, I have a link for them. I think it's at the end. Of course, if you're going to use a camera, you're going to want a tripod. And my best recommendation is get whatever tripod you need to handle the equipment you're going to be using. If you're going to be using a telescope, you're going to need a telescope mount and tripod that's capable of handling a telescope. If you're using a smartphone, you can get a little tiny $20 tripod that's going to suit you just fine. As far as optics, I recommend using some kind of an optics if you're using your smartphone to film the eclipse. And as you can see in this graphic, there are several things you can use. You're going to need some sort of a lens, whether it be binoculars or a little lens made just specifically for smartphones, or a digicam or spotting scope, as some call them. I doubt if a lot of people will be going out and buying solar telescopes, but if you would like to, I've got some hints there for narrowband filters. Whether you want to shoot the sun in hydrogen alpha white, sodium light, whatever narrowband frequency you want to do. And in order to use a telescope or a spotting scope or any of these, you're going to need an adapter. And I've tried several, and I never liked them until I found the Celestron Nex YZ, and that's pictured in the bottom right here. It has a nice clamp that you can lock onto the eyepiece. You can move the camera up, down, left, right, and in and out. So you can get a very good firm attachment to your eyepiece. I see I got a comment here. Okay. Software. I don't know if you all have heard of Solar Snap, the Eclipse app. You can download it online. It costs $12.99. And it's a nice little app for taking pictures of the eclipse. The thing I did not like is that I couldn't really get photographs that I would write home about. Your phone is not made to handle a black sky with an extremely bright spot in the center of it. And I just didn't get good pictures and didn't like it unless you are using a digiscope or some sort of optical aid in front of your camera. If you're doing that, then the Solar Snap app is extremely nice. I would highly recommend it in that case. But standalone just with your phone, I was not impressed. So guys, if you're going to use this app, I would highly recommend you use some kind of optical aid in front of the camera. Now here's an illustration. So I put in the top left picture, I put my phone on a camera and taped a solar filter over the lens and set up the settings. And these are the two pictures I was able to get with my phone. And neither one shows any detail. There were very bright and large sunspots that day. I couldn't even see them in my images. So I did not like it at all. But again, like I said, if you put an optical aid in front, you're good to go. And I keep talking about optical aids. As you all know, you can always just do the zoom thing with your fingers and zoom in. But when you do that, you're not really zooming in. What you're doing is taking the same image that your camera sees and using a smaller portion of the sensor. So in the top three illustrations from left to right, you can see if you zoom in, you just get a little tiny image with the full screen. And as you zoom in, if you look at the middle row, you see there's Saturn a lot closer than it looked before you zoomed in, but it's kind of fuzzy. But if you use an optical zoom, you're actually magnifying the image without changing your sensor. You're not using a smaller, you're using your entire sensor. So it's going to come out much clearer. So I always recommend use optical zoom instead of a digital zoom. And here's another illustration. In the left picture, you can see maybe that there's a street sign in that image. At 8x digital zoom, at 16x digital zoom, you can still see there's a street sign there, but it's not very clearly visible and it's starting to blur a little bit. But with a 20x digiscope, the sign is much magnified, and at 60x with a digiscope, you can read the letters on the sign. The resolution is dramatically increased by using a digital scope. Oh, and remember, if you're going to use a digital scope, the filter must be placed in front of the scope. And there are a lot of digital scopes out there, and in the top illustration, we see one for $40. I've seen these scopes range anywhere from $20 to $100 to $60. So there's a large variety out there. The one thing I would point out is if you buy one of these scopes, make sure it has a glass lens. A lot of the cheaper ones have plastic lenses in there and they're garbage. Other things you can do during an eclipse. If you Google sun funnel, you'll see a telescope with, well, I used a bucket instead of a funnel. But you buy a piece of rear projection TV screen. You can buy it in sheets, and I bought a foot and cut it out and put it on this bucket. And you can put an eyepiece in your scope and have it project an image of the sun onto the viewing screen. And this is a very nice educational tool. You can allow large groups to stand and look at this simultaneously. Since it's on a stationary mount, you can actually see the sun moving, and then you can explain to the audience that they're actually seeing the Earth rotating when they see that happen. So it's kind of a pretty cool educational toy or tool. Resources, and I'll repeat some of the stuff Matt said here, but local astronomy clubs are awesome, guys. Every county I've been in the United States, almost every single county has an astronomy club. And these guys are almost always willing to bend over backwards to help educate people on astronomy. So if there's a local astronomy club in your area, get a hold of. Science centers. That's where I'm going to be for the, Joe and I are going to be at the Catawba Science Center, where they're going to plan an event for the October 14th annular eclipse. Of course, it's going to be total there, or I'm sorry, partial there, but we're going to set up and show the public nonetheless. NASA Solar System Ambassadors. If you Google NASA Solar System Ambassador, it will take you to a site and you can see all the ambassadors in the United States and help you find one that's local to your location. And educators, teachers often know somebody. They have a go-to guy who they contact usually. So there's always someone out there you can find to help. As far as online, I'd recommend you look up the interactive Eclipse map. That's a very powerful tool. It shows you the line of totality, and you can put your mouse anywhere on that line and it will show you the particular circumstances, like when first, exactly what time down to the second the eclipse will begin, what time totality will happen, what time totality will end, what time the partial phases of the eclipse will end. It'll give you altitude and azimuth, so you can look and see, oh, is there going to be a building in my way? It's a very powerful tool. I've also got links in here where you can order glasses. If anyone's interested, Celestron now offers solar binoculars. And I was quite surprised that you would think they would be very, very expensive. They're not. They're not much more than a pair of normal sunglasses or binoculars. There's the link to the NextYZ that I talked about earlier. And again, if you're going to use any kind of an optic in front of your camera, I would recommend that. So once you get whatever equipment it is you're going to use, you need to practice. Practice putting the filter on. Took me several tries to get it to lay flat over my phone when I was just using it without optical aids. And if you are using optical aids, you want to practice with that too. Learn beforehand how to get the camera centered over the eyepiece. Another mistake people often make when they're shooting is pressing the button. You have the camera mounted on a tripod, and when you touch it, it moves. So when you push that button to take a picture, your camera is moving and you're going to get a blurry image. So the easiest way to do that is just set the camera in timer mode and set a 3-second delay. So you touch the camera, 3 seconds later, it takes a picture. Another way, they have apps that you can talk to the phone. You can give the phone a command, a voice command. So when you say shoot or fire in a hole, whatever you want to say, it will understand that command and trigger your camera. And there's no vibration involved there. Another thing you need to learn how to do is to focus when you get your phone pointed at the sun. Like I said, you have a black background and a very white object, and it sometimes has a little bit of trouble finding focus. So you may need to manually focus. It all depends on your phone. I've noticed some phones focus just jumps right in, others it needs some work. Another thing you want to do is set the brightness level, and I think everybody's familiar with that. You touch your phone, hold for a couple seconds, and then when you remove your finger, a brightness icon will come up, and you can slide it left or right to make the sun brighter or darker. And then practice taking pictures of the sun. Open them up in a photo editor, center them if you need to, adjust the brightness and the darkness, crop them if you want to. And when you're done doing all that, don't forget to save the image. I've done that a few times. Another thing with using the snap thing in a phone is your phone is pointing upwards. So this viewing screen is down. And when you look up at it, you're looking right up into the bright sun, and it's extremely hard to see. So when I tried this, I ended up going in the house and grabbing a towel and putting a towel over my head in the back of the camera so I could see better. Okay. Taking the picture. Okay, open it up, set the timer. Yeah, put the solar filter on, put the camera on a tripod, point it at the sun, zoom in. Use the brightness feature to adjust exposure, focus, and take the shot. And you can do this both during the partial and the solar phases. Just remember, if you're doing partials, to have that filter on. And I'm coming to a close here. A few last things I want to say is learn all you can about the eclipse and the circumstances at the site you select. Learn all you can about the equipment you'll be using. Learn about eye safety beforehand. The day of the eclipse is not the time to start preparing. Practice eye safety beforehand. Get yourself a pair of glasses and go outside, see how they work, and get accustomed to them. Practice shooting the sun with your equipment beforehand. And if you prepare appropriately, you're going to have fun on Eclipse Day. You're not going to be struggling with equipment and gear and running around like a crazy person. Take lots of photos and videos of your group. I pointed a GoPro at our group and just let it run for the entire 4 hours of the eclipse. And I took an image every second, and then we could play that back. It was a 7-minute video, I think, when it was done. And in 7 minutes, you could see everybody walking around and moving around. You could see it get dark during the eclipse. It was quite awesome. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that you record the event for posterity. And that's all I have. There's my links, my email and my website. And I have lots and lots of presentations that I've done in the past. If you're interested, go check them out. And I hope you enjoy them. Thank you. That's all I have.
And those are just a few of John's excellent toys there that he's posing with.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
He has quite a setup. Well, thanks to both speakers, we have plenty of time here for lots of questions and discussions, which is what we had in mind for this workshop today. So feel free to just ask your questions or put them in the chat. Either way will do just fine.
Well, no questions, Matt. We did a good job.
Yeah, lots of people are asking for copies of both of your presentations. If you all are willing, we would like to link to those somehow online, perhaps put them on the optics website. I think Chris mentioned that earlier, or somehow make them available.
Yeah, just let me know where to send it, Joe, and I'll send it to you and you can put it on there.